Well, this is awkward. I'm gonna have to start this video off with an apology. You see, I'm what you would call a second edition millennial. I'm old enough to be bitter about being considered a millennial, but young enough to have grown up in the 90s and 2000s. It was my generation's hard-earned dollars which established trends that would lead us to where we are today, and the movie industry was no different. The year was 2009, which was when my coterie of idiots and clans alike of 20-something millennials decided to give two movies all of the money. Their success, deserved or not, hit the film industry with a bang and a whimper, and because of this, for nearly the next decade, the world would have to be subjected to hastily made found footage horror movie after up-converted 3D action movie after found footage horror movie after 3D action movie after found footage horror movie after 3D action after found footage after 3D action found footage. There was no way I could have fathomed the consequences of my actions, and for that, I am truly sorry.
I'm deeply sorry.
I'm sorry because our actions inspired someone to combine those two trends and make this fucking movie. Found Footage 3D is a dumpster baby of a movie. I was intrigued by it because the trailer made it seem like it was going to be a tongue-in-cheek meta-comedy about found footage movies, kind of like what Cabin in the Woods was about Cabin in the Woods movies. So within 10 minutes of me finding out that this movie exists, it was already sending me mixed signals. The 3D element of the movie is kinda played off as a joke, and the movie really wants you to know that it's a joke because it even has characters constantly pointing out how 3D would never work in certain scenarios in real life, all while the real-life film director knowingly makes those same mistakes.
We actually have our 3D GoPro camera set up back here.
Why the hell would a webcam be in 3D?
It's not going to make sense to them if it's not in 3D.
The whole point of a found footage movie is realism, which is constantly pointed out by the movie. Why would you go out of your way to break that realism for the sake of 3D? But I guess all of that is a moot point, and I'm just complaining to complain because I didn't actually watch found footage 3D. I just watched found footage because iTunes doesn't sell 3D movies, and I don't own a 3D TV, you know, like pretty much everyone else. As far as I can tell, the only people who got to see this movie in 3D were people who were unfortunate enough to see it in one of the festivals it screened at. It's kind of unintentionally hilarious because you have these characters talking about how awesome 3D is going to be as they push stuff in and out of the camera, and I'm just sitting here like an idiot in front of my regular flat computer monitor like, there's so much depth. Oh, and did I mention that this is one of those self-aware movies? Now, I happen to really like self-aware movies, but one of the things that makes those movies enjoyable is the self-deprecating humor. Like how Cabin in the Woods makes the whole generic horror movie scenario a government-controlled conspiracy. And you have stuff happen like when the group of kids decide to stick together so the secret organization pumps chemicals into the air to make them think that splitting up is a good idea. That's funny. That's clever, but in found footage 3D, apart from the one scene in the iTunes trailer I mentioned earlier, this movie is a stone-cold horror film that takes itself way too seriously. Or maybe it didn't, and all the humor just went over my head. But from my perspective, it seems like the extent of its self-awareness consists of characters pointing out all of the mistakes other shitty found footage movies make while the real-life filmmakers make those same mistakes. And I can't tell if those mistakes are being made intentionally or not, which is kind of infuriating. I can't remember the last time I was this pissed off while watching a movie. So that's enough beating around the bush. Found Footage 3D is a stupid movie with stupid characters, a stupid story, and as far as I can tell was only made to capitalize on a stupid gimmick. But did they get anything right? Let's jump in and find out. The movie starts with the title card letting us know the circumstances in which this found footage movie takes place. And if you thought that was the actual start of the movie, then you're a fucking idiot because it's actually the title card for the fake found footage movie that exists inside of the found footage movie that we're watching. Remember, this movie is meta.
It's a little cliche, don't you think?
No. That's not cliche. That's how every found footage movie starts.
I know, that's why they call it cliche.
One thing that I think is hilarious is that they had to drop the 3D from the title for the video release, so it's just found footage, but you can clearly see that they just tried to cover up the 3D but didn't even get that right. So if you haven't figured it out, the movie we're watching, Found Footage 3D, is presented as a behind-the-scenes documentary of a film crew making a found footage horror movie. And if you want to go a level deeper than that, the director of this movie actually made a production diary on YouTube, kind of like how the camera operator character makes a production diary of the movie inside of this movie. So, if you watch the director's production diary in tandem with this movie, it's kind of like you're watching a found footage movie inside of a found footage movie inside of a found footage movie inside of a found footage movie.
It's happening. We're making movies.
So this guy right here is Andrew, the director. Not the actual director, that's this guy, but the director of the movie inside of the movie. And this guy right here is Derek, the producer, financier, writer, and star of Spectre of Death. And you'll quickly learn that most of this movie's drama comes from Derek being the kind of person that thinks he knows everything but actually doesn't know anything.
But again, in this first part, it doesn't say anything about why they were filming in the first place. It just says that the footage was found. What footage?
The vacation video footage?
No, I know that, but the audience needs to know that.
Yeah.
Right.
No, of course they do.
Right.
Right, no, I'm saying, yeah, I mean, we should put that in there.
We also meet Mark, the camera op and editor, Carl, the sound guy, and Lily, the production assistant.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm learning a lot.
How are we going to separate ourselves from every other shitty found footage movie that people are making these days?
You see what they did there? The guy in the movie is talking about the movie that they're making, but really they're talking about the movie that you're watching. So meta.
There is another way to get free press, and that is to be the first at something.
So, what are we going to be the first to do?
We are shooting the first ever found footage horror movie in 3D.
What?
What a coincidence. They're shooting a found footage horror movie in 3D inside of a found footage horror movie in 3D. So meta. I'm just gonna say this up front, but this movie is not nearly as clever as it thinks it is. We're less than 5 minutes into this sucker and the self-awareness meter is already turned up to 11 and it has no intention of backing down.
How does that even make sense in the story? Like, so why would your character film in 3D?
Andrew tries to explain to Derek that making a found footage horror movie in 3D would make absolutely no sense, but Derek does some verbal gymnastics to get around that logic because it's painfully obvious he just wants to make a 3D movie.
In the premise of the film, it's a vacation video, so who shoots their vacation videos in 3D?
Whatever. My character is now a filmmaker. I'm a 3D enthusiast.
That's not a thing.
It is now.
So they wrote a character who wants to make a 3D movie for no logical reason, and they put him in a movie that is in 3D for no logical reason. Gee, why does that sound familiar? So you're probably thinking that they've explained how the movie within the movie is going to be in 3D, but how is the movie that we're watching going to be in 3D? Well, don't worry, Derek got you, fam.
We are also shooting the first ever behind-the-scenes documentary. Also,
How much did you spend on this thing?
doesn't matter, we can return it.
It's kind of hilarious because we know it's supposed to be in 3D, but this is all we get to see because this movie didn't get theatrical distribution. They get the van loaded up with the equipment, and it's here that we learn that the lead actress is running late.
Do you want me to call her?
Do whatever the you want to do.
We also learn that the lead actress, Amy, just happens to be Derek's ex-wife.
How do I put it delicately? It's appropriate that we are filming a horror movie.
Oh yeah, did I mention that because the movie that we're watching is actually behind the scenes of the movie within the movie, we get these random exposition interviews to fill us in on details of the character and story that were too difficult to deliver naturally?
I wasn't really expecting to be doing this right now anyway.
It's fine. You look fine. You look beautiful.
So Mark's got a thing for Amy, who's Derek's ex-wife. Drama, conflict.
Sorry, I need to adjust your mic.
And, okay, I can get on board that this is a movie about making a movie, but that means you're gonna have to get the actual filmmaking part of it right. Mark is replacing Amy's wireless mic transmitter, which you can clearly see that he's holding here. So why the fuck can we still hear what they're saying if the microphone isn't plugged in?
Can I ask you a question?
And don't give me some crap about it being audio from the built-in microphone on the camera. There is no way you'd get this clear audio from the onboard camera microphone.
Thousands of movies get made every year. Never seen the light of day.
Yes, yeah, it feels really good to be here.
And you can tell that the audio in the scene is coming from the microphone clipped onto her shirt because Mark gets louder as he gets closer to it.
Sorry, I need to adjust your mic.
But we shouldn't be getting any audio at all because the microphone isn't even plugged in. I know that I'm nitpicking this, but you can't expect to make a movie about filmmaking that goes out of its way to explain a lot of the technical aspects of filmmaking without me scrutinizing everything it gets wrong. Imagine that instead of changing her microphone, the battery on the camera dies. So this conversation is taking place while he's changing the camera's battery, but the camera is somehow still recording.
That has absolutely no effect on sound.
That's how stupid it is. They even edited in some audio clipping like he's plugging the microphone back in.
I'm just trying to piece out why he asked me to still do this.
This doesn't make any sense.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm learning a lot.
It's happening. We're making movies.
With everything packed, they drive off to their shooting location.
Where did you find this place anyway?
Amy's family owns it. Her uncle or something built it during the Depression.
Lily gets her own interview now, and it's here we learn how she got involved with Spectre of Death.
Yeah, I met Derek at a party last week, and he asked me if I wanted to come help out on the film.
So it's pretty obvious why she's here. Derek finds a couple of locals and decides to put them in the film Blair Witch style.
We need you to tell us to stay away from the farm. And action.
Hey, we're looking. Do you guys know how to get to like the old Buford farm out there?
Yeah, I do.
Cut. Okay.
We'll get back to this scene later.
Are you saying that the place we're actually going to is haunted?
You know,
haunted.
old family superstition bullshit or whatever.
Everything you're saying makes it sound worse.
So, the cabin in the woods that they're going to be filming in is actually haunted, because of course it is. And because this movie is so meta, Carl acts as the voice of the audience and says exactly what we're thinking.
You don't bring a film crew to a haunted house to film a horror movie. Have you not seen every horror movie ever?
Obvious foreshadowing is obvious. They make it to the cabin and it's exactly what you'd expect it to be. It's a spooky cabin with a spooky mounted boar's head and a spooky piano and a spooky old bed and spooky bloodstains all over the place. Once again, acting as the voice of the audience, Carl says,
That's disturbing.
but of course, Derek isn't having any of it.
There's a bunch of weird stuff around. Look, there's water stains there.
They go to bed and are woken up by what the subtitles describe as eerie squawking. Mark wakes up Carl and gets his sound gear to listen to what's going on. Now everyone's awake and they decide to go outside and investigate.
You don't go investigate.
Mark and Andrew go outside to investigate because of course they do, and they hear all the spooky noises.
Jesus!
Oh, Andrew starts freaking out because his flashlight stops working, because of course it does. And then jump scare!
Loud noises!
Derek? Oh, damn it.
Turns out it was Derek all along playing spooky sounds through a speaker because he's an asshole.
Hey, don't tell anybody else, okay? I just want to set the vibe for the shoot.
First scare's always a false scare, right?
This movie is not nearly as clever as it thinks it is.
It's happening. We're making movies.
Day one of shooting commences, and we're treated to an interview with Derek and Amy.
So basically, the script was written by myself and Derek, and what?
Oh, never mind.
I wrote several finished scenes.
You tweaked some of what I had already written.
Can we not do this on camera, please?
And it's now that we finally learn a little bit of what Spectre of Death is about.
So we play a husband and wife who come out to this cabin in Central Texas that she inherited from her great uncle.
And my character's a documentarian. I work too hard, so we come out here to reconnect.
But of course, they find more than they bargained for.
So, their movie is about a failing marriage, so they come out to a cabin to make a movie and reconnect? What a coincidence! The movie we're watching is about a failing marriage, so they come out to a cabin to make a movie and reconnect. Did you get that? Did you understand that connection? Yes, you did, because it's not a difficult connection to make. But the movie doesn't think so, because not 2 minutes later,
the ghost, or the monster, whatever you want to call it, is a metaphor.
This movie is not nearly as clever as it thinks it is. Do you see why this movie pisses me off so much? In trying to be meta, it spoon-feeds you everything it's trying to be meta about to the point where it feels like it's insulting the audience's intelligence. Like it isn't confident that you'll be able to pick up on these things yourself.
Seriously, guys, you brought us to a cabin that's haunted in the middle of the woods where a husband murdered his wife to shoot a movie about a husband murdering his wife at a haunted cabin in the woods?
Yep.
For reals?
Yeah.
So, in every found footage film, we have to answer 2 questions. The first of which is, why are we filming? That's usually answered pretty early in the movie, usually the first scene, which we're actually about to do right now. The second question is exactly the same as the first question, but for the third act. It's usually, why the f*** haven't you put the camera down and run the hell away? If you answer that one wrong, the whole third act just completely falls apart.
I want you to remember these questions. Remember them real good. It's here that we learn that Spectre of Death doesn't have an ending yet.
There's no ending. It actually stops dead on page 71, in the middle of the scene.
It doesn't have an ending.
No, we don't have an ending right now, but that's okay. I mean, hey, worked on Apocalypse Now, right?
Oh, great. Now Amy's the voice of the audience.
Coppola? Comparing yourself to Coppola?
Oh, Yeah, that makes sense now.
So they start filming the first scene and it goes great. Turns out that Derek made some changes to the script that Amy didn't know about. Amy gets pissed off about the changes to the script because it turns out that this is one of the scenes that she wrote. And the movie takes the opportunity to get so meta.
Structurally, we need to establish the before of their relationship.
I know, but we also need to show that there's a little bit of
We
conflict.
need to show that we're in love.
I know, and in that love there is conflict. That is part of what's going to happen later.
This movie is not nearly as clever as it thinks it is.
Oh, what now? It's all my f***ing fault. Is this the same bullshit we go to?
This is acting. It's just pretending.
Day one.
Normally I work on, bigger, more professional productions.
We learned that Carl, who clearly doesn't want to be here, actually turned down a much bigger job on a different movie to be here.
I turned down a Ben Affleck movie. Derek helped me out a few years ago financially when I needed that, and I'm returning the favor.
The first day of filming is done, and Mark is shooting some more for his behind-the-scenes documentary when Andrew and Carl get into a discussion about why people in found footage movies continue filming everything.
And we know that everyone's dying in found footage.
Did you catch that? Do you think that might be a little bit of foreshadowing?
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Mark starts going through some of the footage he shot while he records himself for his production diary on his webcam in 3D. Because that makes sense somehow.
We actually have our 3D GoPro camera set up back here.
But he's recording himself because he found something spooky on the footage.
There.
Well, Mark must have the eyes of a f***ing eagle, because even after he adjusts the color to see out the window better, I could barely tell that something walks by. He hears a noise,
Whatever it is,
and decides to go investigate. While he's gone, the thing on his computer starts moving and disappears. Mark comes back and he's all like, the f***? We jump to day 5 of shooting, and by now it's clear that even though Andrew is director by title, Derek is really the one running the show.
So she's like, F you. Boom, 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 boom.
The lost thing?
Spectre flashes.
Today, we have the first appearance of the Spectre.
How do you plan on doing the Spectre?
Well, I wanted to do it as a practical effect because I think
That guy in a Spectre suit would look retarded.
Yes, well, bad CG will look more retarded.
Who says it's gonna be bad CG?
We can't afford good CG.
Big special effects, which we don't have the budget for.
They start filming their scene.
Sorry, I kicked it in the river.
You kicked it in the river?
I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure this scene sounds pretty familiar, almost like it's from a different, much better found footage movie.
I kicked that fucking into the creek yesterday. It was useless. I kicked that into the creek.
You kicked it in the river?
I didn't mean to kick it in the river, it just fell in the river.
This guy knows what's up.
I would say that the Spectre is probably the fictional couple's own negative energy that's, physically manifested.
Yeah, that makes sense now.
So apparently in this movie within the movie, there's a security camera set up in this old shitty cabin in the middle of nowhere. And while Andrew doesn't point out that the security camera's existence doesn't make any sense, he does manage to point out a gaping hole in Derek's obsession with 3D.
When the audience is watching the surveillance footage, it's not going to make sense to them if it's not in 3D. Well, there's no such thing as a 3D surveillance camera.
We don't know that.
No, I do. I looked it up.
Do you have 2 GoPros?
I have several.
Great, take 2, stick them together. Left eye, right eye, stereo, 3D, boom, that's your problem solved.
I just think you're missing the point a little.
You want to know who else missed the point?
3D GoPro camera set up back here.
And don't overthink it. Audiences, stupid. You making it happen, 3D.
Remember what I said about this movie insulting the audience's intelligence?
It's a ridiculous idea, but it might actually work.
You get away with it. Like, it makes you look like the genius. Oh, we're just running around with the camera. We don't know what we're doing. And so it's like, well, the light's crap and the sound's crap. You're like, hey, exactly, but guess who's paying for it? Boom.
You see what I'm talking about?
We shouldn't use that one.
Amy's doing her interview, but she keeps getting distracted by Derek flirting with Lily in the background.
Hey guys, we're doing an interview.
Awesome.
They start rehearsing the next scene where a shovel is supposed to fall down and almost hit Amy in the head.
This is where we use the pop scare. It's called a jump scare. It's called a jump scare, and I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
I don't care if you have no film experience whatsoever, how the hell are we expected to accept that anyone, much less a person on a horror film set, doesn't know that it's called a jump scare and not a pop scare?
I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm learning a lot.
And you know what, actually, it's meant to appease audience members who are just too stupid to know better.
Remember, this is what this film thinks about you. And because this movie is so meta, you bet your ass we're about to get a jump scare.
Jesus.
It's called a jump scare, and I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
Having your characters talk about how cliche something is and then doing the same thing that they were talking about is not smart, self-aware filmmaking. It's lazy and borderline condescending to your audience. This movie is not nearly as clever as it thinks it is.
It's happening. We're making movies.
Ah, look at those dust particles. I'll bet it must look awesome in 3D, but we'll never know because this movie didn't get theatrical distribution. An argument breaks out as to whether or not they need to take Lily to the hospital, because she just got smashed in the head with a shovel. Pretty much everyone thinks that she needs to go to a hospital, but Derek's all like, it's not that bad.
It's a bump on the head.
I also like how one of their crew members just almost got killed and they're trying to figure out if she needs to go to a hospital, and Mark still has time to pull everyone aside for their individual interviews. Priorities.
These things do happen. Shit happens, people get hurt, they get banged up. We can keep moving forward and not overreact.
Another thing this movie gets wrong about the filmmaking, I don't care how big or small your crew is, and I don't care how big or small the person is, but if someone on a film set gets injured in an accident, that production grinds to a halt. Especially these days. In 2014, a camera assistant was killed on the set of a movie in an accident due to negligence. You want to know what happened to the filmmakers involved? They were charged with involuntary manslaughter, and some even served jail time. A foundation was even set up in the camera assistant's name with the hotline for cast or crew members to call if they feel like they're working in unsafe conditions. Safety on set is kind of a big deal. Now, it's kind of understandable to his character that Derek is just kind of brushing off the fact that his production assistant was just hit in the face with a shovel, but everyone else on set, especially Carl,
Normally I work on, bigger, more professional productions,
would have shut down the production for safety reasons immediately. I get that in order for this movie to movie, they kind of need to keep filming, but for a movie that goes out of its way to try to accurately show how movies are made, this whole thing kind of doesn't make sense.
It's happening. We're making movies.
So later that night, Derek and Andrew are arguing about how the movie should end. Derek wants to explain everything while Andrew thinks everything should be left vague so they can build on the mythology in a sequel.
Charge him another $10.
Sure.
$13, 3D.
3D, that's right.
IMAX, 15.
Exactly.
My ears are telling me that Derek is the one saying these things, but since this is a self-aware movie that doesn't know how to self-aware, my mind is telling me that it's really this guy talking. But something's telling me that this movie isn't getting a sequel, because this movie didn't get theatrical distribution. Back to Mark editing his production diary, but for some reason Amy is the one behind the camera this time. Mark turns on the webcam so he can film Amy filming him.
It's very meta.
This movie isn't nearly as clever. You get the point. They continue their conversation and Amy puts down the camera so it can conspicuously point at the computer screen. Gee, I wonder why. Do you think something is gonna happen on the computer screen like it did before? Well, something better happen because we're about halfway into this horror movie and I don't know if you noticed, but nothing's happened yet. Amy tells Mark that she's optimistic that she and Derek might get back together, but while Mark's video timeline plays in the background, Amy accidentally hears Derek talking shit about her.
No, turn it up, turn it up.
Head examined for casting her in the first place. So you're not trying to get back together with her? No.
Which, again, I'm sorry, just bear with me, but going back to the whole filmmaking portrayed accurately thing, there's absolutely no reason this clip would be in his timeline. Just a brief summary about how editing works, which is something that Mark should know. The video clips that you capture with your camera are here in the bin. You double click on them to bring them up here into the source window. Here you set your in and out points for which parts of the clip you want to use, and then you bring them down here into your timeline. From here, it looks like the entire clip of Derek talking shit about Amy is in the timeline, unedited, which already doesn't make sense, but it also implies that Mark intended to put the footage of his producer, writer, lead actor talking shit about his lead actress into the production diary he's going to publish to Facebook, which is either a total dick move or makes even less sense. The only reason this clip is in the timeline is so that Mark can forget to press pause when Amy walks into the room so she can overhear her ex-husband talking shit about her literally seconds after she says she hopes she can get back together with him. I hate to be the guy to point out mistakes in filmmaking techniques of a production diary within a film because it makes me look like the asshole.
I'm the worst.
But if you're going to hinge major plot points of your movie on accurate portrayals of filmmaking, you can't expect it not to be scrutinized. So as Mark and Amy are talking, the timeline plays to some footage he shot earlier after Lily got smashed in the face with a shovel, and oh no, look at that, it's a spooky on the screen, which again, it makes no sense for this unedited clip to be in the timeline, and it makes even less sense if this thing is in the video that Mark wouldn't have seen it while he was editing. But then this happens.
Is it?
What? The spooky thing goes from the footage he shot earlier into the view of his webcam, but then it implies that it was actually in the room when it goes into Amy? How does this make any sense? We've already seen that the spooky thing can change things on the computer monitors, so going from one window right to the next one kinda makes sense. But is the movie trying to tell me that it had such impeccable timing that it was able to possess Amy in real life at the exact same time it lined up with the footage on the computer? And while that was happening, neither one of them saw it? Amy is looking right at Mark and she didn't see it past him on the computer screen, and Mark didn't see the huge spooky monster out of the corner of his eye. It really seems like the filmmakers were too occupied with making something look cool without stopping to think if it actually made any sense.
It's happening. We're making movies.
Excuse me, if you could keep it in your pants, we would not even be here!
The next day starts off with Amy and Derek going at it, but psych, they were just filming a scene for the movie. But then Amy and Derek start going at it for real, but psych! Nah, they're actually arguing this time.
I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
Amy pulls a Paranormal Activity 2, and everyone is freaking the f*** out. But they're not freaking out because the house is haunted and they think that Amy is possessed.
Did you arm the gang?
No! Turns out that the whole thing was a practical effect that misfired. Did you get that? It's a subversion. We're supposed to think that the spooky just happened, but it turns out to be just a gag for the movie within the movie. But hey, it turns out that it actually was a spooky because the practical effect trigger wasn't even plugged in. This movie makes me sad because it just reminds me that I'll never get to see the crew cleaning up the mess in 3D. Once again, Carl acts as the voice of the audience.
At the same time that Amy lost her shit, you think that's just a coincidence that it happened?
What do you want me to say, man? The house is haunted. We're all gonna die.
Obvious foreshadowing is obvious. Late at night, they're all awoken by the sound of a woman screaming in the distance. Oh no, Amy's gone. They run outside to help her, but hey, it turns out that she's just fine. She and Derek just smashing. Another day of filming starts and Amy's got a bruise on her eye that Lily tries to cover up with makeup. Later that night, Amy's acting kinda spooky.
Babe?
I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
But no, it just turns out that they're filming for their movie. Also, now that they smash in, Derek and Amy seem to be getting along. And in a complete 180 character turn, Derek stands up and gives his crew a little pep talk.
I know that it's been a stressful couple days. We are all in this together. I say that we all get cleaned up and head out onto the road, Route 4, there's a little bar there, and let's go get ourselves sloppy drunk.
So they go to the bar and everybody seems to be having a great time. And it's here that Derek lets his crew in on a little secret that he's been keeping.
The illustrious and very influential Scott Weinberg is coming to do a story on the film.
So Derek and Amy are getting along, Derek has turned over a new leaf, and now our prominent journalist is going to be visiting their set to do a story on Spectre of Death. Everything is looking optimistic, which this movie just can't stand for. How long do you want to guess until things get ruined? Well, aces to you if you guessed about 7 seconds.
That didn't last very long now, did it?
They go back to the cabin to find that somebody has trashed the place. Carl immediately jumps to the conclusion that Derek was the one that trashed the house.
Why is none of your stuff even touched?
In the argument, Carl finally learns that the creepy noises at night were just Derek messing with them.
Good luck with your movie. I'm gonna go.
But then, in true asshole fashion, remember when
Derek helped me out a few years ago, financially, when I needed that.
Yeah. Turns out that money was so that Carl could buy his sound gear, but Derek hid a clause in the loan contract that stipulates that he actually owns the gear until Carl pays him back.
If you're a f***ing asshole!
So without the sound guy, Lily becomes the new sound person.
Lily Pad the sound woman.
Yeah, promotion, moving up in the world.
Yeah, shit, how hard can it be? You just gotta hit record and point the microphone at whoever's talking.
Again, I know that Derek is supposed to be the ignorant douche nozzle, but operating sound equipment isn't that simple. But hey, this movie's got about half an hour left to movie, so someone's gotta do it. They're filming at night, and Andrew points out that they still haven't come up with the reason for Amy to still be recording.
Don't even understand why she's still holding the camera. Why isn't she throwing it away and
Because the movie would be over if she puts the camera down.
Why the f haven't you put the camera down and run the hell away? If you answer that one wrong, the whole third act just completely falls apart.
Honestly, why did your brother even hire me?
Wait, what was that again?
Honestly, why did your brother even hire me?
Mark and Derek are brothers, and they waited over an hour to fill us in on this information? So Amy's Mark's sister-in-law? That really paints their whole little relationship in a completely different perspective. A perspective that probably would have been useful to your audience, you know, from the beginning. So yeah, apparently I'm the asshole because I didn't realize until I was editing this that about 2 minutes into the movie.
Hi, Andrew. Lily.
This is my brother Mark.
Good.
Hey, Mark.
Hi. Mark, this is Lily, our new PA.
So yeah, I really Britted that one.
I'm the worst.
I'm deeply sorry.
We good now? Okay, moving on.
What is the point of making the first 3D found footage horror movie if it's just gonna suck?
I have a feeling that they didn't intend for this line to be meta, but it's kind of hilarious because it totally is.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense now.
The next morning, Amy wakes up to find that her arm is all cut up.
Amy, we're taking you to the hospital. Yeah.
Oh, so now they're taking people to the hospital? Did they forget about the time that Lily almost died?
Jesus!
Mark goes over some of his footage for the production diary, and Amy comes in with the camera again. But as they're talking, the footage on the computer decides to go all spooky on them again.
Did you fall sleeping?
No.
Mark,
No.
that's super creepy.
Yeah, it's terrifying, actually.
But turns out none of them were filming, and it was actually the spooky thing filming her.
I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
Now, I'm not entirely sure how to explain what happens next. It seems kind of like what they're looking at isn't really a recording, but it's some sort of live feed from the perspective of the spooky smoke monster thing, even though it happened last night, but you can see Amy in the present in the reflection of the mirror on the computer screen. I honestly watched this like 4 times and tried to wrap my brain around what was supposed to be happening, but words just can't really explain, so I'll just show it to you.
That's that mirror back there. He doesn't have a camera. How's he holding it?
What?
Wave your arm again. Wave your arm again.
Turn it off!
Yeah.
Turn the shit off! Turn it off, Mark!
It won't stop. It won't stop.
Loud noises!
Are we all on the same page now? Okay, moving on. Amy starts screaming, so everyone's freaking out. Mark tries to show them on the computer what happened, but of course the footage is mysteriously gone. It turns out that even though it happened right in front of their eyes, Mark didn't see a thing happen in real life, and Amy only saw it on the screen of her camera. So she grabs the camera to show everyone what she just saw, and then the film just kind of moves on. So, I'm guessing that even though we, as the audience, just saw the spooky smoke monster dive out of the mirror and into the camera, when they played back the footage on the camera, it didn't show anything because nobody seems to be addressing the spooky smoke monster diving out of the mirror and into the camera. I get that they've established that this thing can manipulate the footage to make itself disappear.
That shit, Mark. You watch the tape, there's nothing there. She's f***ing crazy!
But if it disappeared itself to make Amy look crazy, why could we see it in the final film? It doesn't make sense. Derek and Mark start arguing.
Go home. You're fired.
I'm taking Amy with me.
Just ask her. Ask her to choose between you and her film career.
So Mark goes to Amy and tries to convince her to leave.
I'm gonna record everything. To protect you.
You're gonna need a better excuse than that. To keep the camera running and for that.
This film is nowhere near as clever. He tries to get her to leave with him, but she decides to stay and finish the movie. So he decides to stay and finish the movie too.
No, please. You have to go.
I'm pretty sure if the possessed lady in what is clearly an actual haunted house is telling you that you should go, you should probably listen to her. But nope, the power of boners is strong with this one and he decides to stay anyway. Did you catch that spooky moment? It seemed pretty familiar, almost like it's originally from a much better found footage movie.
I think we'll be okay now.
So, the journalist shows up and everybody puts their game face on.
Everybody, the legendary Scott Weinberg!
Much like we've been subjected to for the last hour, Scott, the journalist, can't seem to wrap his mind around what he's walking into.
4 people making a feature film?
We had a little bit of a bigger crew originally.
Someone comes up with the brilliant idea of showing him some of the footage that they've shot, and his reactions to it are less than abysmal. So he decides to do some interviews.
You know, the marriage between Derek and Amy is sort of crumbling. And
It's amazing that you guys can pull that off because you're clearly crazy in love, you know? And in the
fucking place and put it.
It's ironic, do you get it?
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah, I think that works better than an argument. We see the scene, and then I turn into the demon and I kill you.
It's just a bit of an abrupt ending, no?
Obvious foreshadowing is obvious.
Wait a minute, why does my character have to die?
The one hard and fast rule of found footage is that everybody dies.
This movie is not nearly as clever as it jump scare.
We just change a few
What we
things.
could do is
I need to live.
across.
And now that Carl's gone, Andrew gets his turn to act as the voice of the audience.
This genre has had two halfway decent films, one of which was 15 years ago, and every other found footage film since then has been complete bullshit. I mean, why people waste their money on this vomit-inducing amateur hour bullshit is beyond me.
This is what the film thinks of its audience. So everyone gets their shit together enough to get ready to shoot the final scene of Spectre of Death.
50, take 2.
You maybe want to clap that thing a little louder? The reason films use a clapboard is because they're usually recording audio and video on separate devices. They'll then use the frame that the clapper closes in the video and the frame that the audio peaks from the clap in the audio recording as a sync point in editing, so they know that the audio and video are synced together. In this scene that they're shooting, the video is obviously coming from the GoPro security camera and the audio is coming from the wireless microphones we saw Lily setting up on Amy and Derek. There's no way that this dainty little clap is loud enough for those microphones to pick up from across the room. Now, Lily is operating the sound equipment for the first time and is less than experienced, so it'd be understandable for her not to know this.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm learning a lot.
But again, she is surrounded by at least an experienced director, an experienced actress, and an experienced camera operator. Do they mean to tell me that no one bothered to point out that she's been using the slate wrong this entire time? It's especially unbelievable that Mark doesn't say anything to her because he's the one who's editing this thing together. And I can tell you from experience that if you have whoever is editing your film on set and he sees somebody using the slate incorrectly, he's going to be the first one to say something about it because it's going to be his problem to fix later on in editing. Once again, punch me in the face, I know I'm nitpicking.
Yeah, I'm the jerk.
But if you're gonna go out of your way to portray accurate filmmaking in your movie, don't expect me not to scrutinize it. Oh, and I'm not done. You can clearly see the crash pad set up covering the refrigerator. Crash pads are used for stunts so people can fall down without getting injured. That means that the shot they intend on filming probably involves Derek falling off the ladder into the crash pad so he doesn't hit the fridge. But why the fuck are they just out here in plain view of their GoPro security camera shot? There is no other camera in this scene, so they clearly plan on this GoPro shot being used in the final cut of their film, and yet they make no effort to hide the blatantly visible safety equipment in their scene. And what's weird now is that it's so blatant, I'm not sure if I should blame the characters in the movie or the filmmakers themselves for the mistake, because as you're about to find out, the crash pads don't even get used for the stunt they're set up for. So everyone else in the other room is watching playback and they're all like, hey, this is actually going pretty good. Maybe this thing won't turn out to be such a piece of shit after all. But then Amy gets her spooky face on and decides to go off book. See, they didn't even use the crash pads. Why did they have to be there at all? Possessed Amy slams the door shut and everyone's freaking out because shit starts to hit the fan. But for some reason, the fucking earthquake and chair floating in midair doesn't convince Scott.
So, is this a joke?
What?
You guys are trying to get me into the film?
What? No.
Because,
No.
It's called a jump scare, and I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
So he's dead, Derek's definitely dead, and then oh no, Andrew's dead too. So Mark and Lily run out into the woods to try to escape the spooky monster thingy. But wait a minute, remember?
Don't even understand why she's still holding the camera. Why did she throw it away and
Because the movie would be over if she puts the camera down.
Why the haven't you put the camera down and run the hell away? If you answer that one wrong, the whole third act just completely falls apart.
Why do you still have this stupid thing? Just put it down.
Well,
I think it's the only way you could see it. I could see it on the camera, but when it came out of the cabin, I couldn't see it with my eyes.
that's the movie's solution? You can only see the spooky smoke monster on the camera? I could get on board with that as a mechanic for a found footage horror movie because I actually think that could be pretty clever, but the problem now is that the movie's already f***ed that up. One of the only things we know about this monster thingy is that it can manipulate the footage and computer screen so it can seemingly appear and disappear at will. If you can only see it through the camera, that doesn't explain why Mark didn't see it while he was filming this, or why when Amy filmed this and played back the footage, nobody could could see it, and that instance implies that you can see it on the camera, but it doesn't record the monster for some reason. And that doesn't explain why we can see it in the found footage. It's kind of stupid that in a self-aware found footage horror movie that sets out to deconstruct the tropes and cliches of found footage horror movies establishes this.
Why the f haven't you put the camera down and run the hell away?
As one of the rules found footage horror movies need to follow, and they can't even get that right. So Mark and Lily try to make it to the van to escape, but they find Carl. They were within view of the cabin, and we've seen them filming out in the woods since Carl walked off set, and they're trying to tell me that nobody found his dead body less than a football field away from where they've been? And then the smoke monster gets Lily, so Mark runs away in typical found footage movie fashion.
It's bouncing all over the goddamn place. You can't even watch it. Are you personally going to go into the theater and clean up all the puke? Because that's what's going to happen if you show it like that.
It's a good thing this movie never got theatrical distribution. Oh no, now Lily's dead. We got to know so much about her and form a personal connection with her throughout the entire film. She will surely be missed. So Mark makes it to the van and starts to drive off, but he hears the faint voice of Amy calling out for help. Where the hell is her voice coming from?
I have the other camera. Go back inside. Find the other wireless mic. I think I'll be able to hear you through the camera.
A few things about this.
Yeah, I'm the jerk.
Wireless microphones work with a transmitter and receiver. The transmitter is clipped onto the actor or actress and plugged into the microphone. The receiver is then plugged into the audio recorder. There is no reason why wireless microphones would magically turn two cameras into pseudo walkie-talkies for two people to communicate through them. The only way that this could possibly make sense is if the wireless microphone receivers are hooked up to the audio recorder, which we've seen that they are, but then there are other transmitters hooked up to the audio recorder sending out audio to receivers hooked up to the cameras to record reference audio. And that theoretically could work the way the movie wants it to work. But there is no way in hell that Lily, a production assistant promoted to sound operator last minute, could have figured out how to hook up all of that.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm learning a lot.
So Mark runs back to find the other wireless microphone. Hey, why are these lights turned off? They were on a minute ago. He realizes that the other mic was attached to Derek right before he got vaporized by the spooky smoke monster, so he's got to go in there to get it. He gets the microphone and turns it on, which, why was it turned off in the first place? It should still be turned on from when they were filming earlier. Jump scare!
I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
Oh, so Scott's still alive. Oh, no he's not. Now, I don't even want to imagine what this next sequence might have looked like in 3D. I can only imagine it must have looked like what I can only describe as an assault on your depth perception because the filmmakers decided that it would be a good idea to see a split-screen view of Mark and Amy's cameras as they run around and try to find each other.
It's happening. We're making movies.
Through completely illogical movie magic, Mark and Amy can now finally speak to each other.
Amy?
I can hear you.
They decide to meet up at the van, but oh no, Mark gets in the van to come get Amy and she's attacked by the spooky smoke monster. So Mark gets out and saves her and they drive off to safety.
Please, go, Amy.
You are dying. Why are you so concerned with pointing your camera at Mark?
Don't even understand why she's still holding the camera. Why did she throw it away and
Because the movie would be over if she puts the camera down.
So there's a fallen tree blocking the road, because of course there is, and Mark crashes the van. Mark tries to get the van started, but he can't, but Amy tells him not to worry about it.
Get the camera.
They have a heartfelt moment where Amy says that she wanted to kill Derek because of how much of a piece of shit he is, and Mark's all like,
Deserved it.
what? Sure, he was an asshole, but he deserved it? That's a little harsh for your brother, don't you think?
Thank you for coming back for me. I wish you hadn't. I hoped you would remember the one rule of found footage movies.
Which one are you talking about?
The one hard and fast rule of found footage is that everybody dies.
Jump scare!
Loud noises!
I think it's probably one of the most overused cliches in horror movies.
And then the movie ends. So, as you can see, found footage 3D was kinda stupid. It really wanted to be this clever, self-aware meta-commentary on the genre of found footage, but every time it tried to break the fourth wall in that respect, it ended up spoon-feeding the audience what it was trying to tell you, and that got old pretty f***ing quick. There was no subtlety, like it had no confidence that the audience would pick up on the fact that it's a self-aware movie. But even after all of that, it's hard for me not to have some weird kind of respect for this movie and the filmmakers. I mean, they made a 3D found footage horror movie about a film crew making a 3D found footage horror movie that constantly points out why a 3D found footage horror movie is a dumb idea. That either takes a strange amount of stupidity or dedication, or maybe a combination of both. Either way, one thing I can say about this movie is that I can hardly remember the last time I had an emotional reaction this strong to a film. I mean, I finished this movie at 3 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't go to sleep, not because it scared me, but because it pissed me off so much. So I can't necessarily say that I enjoyed the movie, far from it, but I can say I won't be forgetting it anytime soon. So aces to you, Mr. Writer-Director. I'm sure it's not the reaction you were looking for, but you definitely made an impact. And I can't really harp on this guy too much. It's clear that he loves his craft, and if you check out his production diary for this film on YouTube, which I actually do recommend, you can clearly see the amount of time and dedication he and the rest of the cast and crew devoted to making this movie. They even have these little short films where they recreated iconic movie scenes shot for shot, but as if they were made with zero budget, and they're actually pretty funny. So I may not have liked their movie, like, at all, but I respect it, and strangely I hope they get to make another one at some point. But with all that said, as much as I hated found footage 3D, did they get anything right? Yes, at least I think so. It happens around 11 minutes in. Remember that scene where they find the two random locals and try to get them into one of the scenes of their movie? This entire scene is actually what they used for their iTunes trailer, and it's what misled me into thinking this movie wasn't going to take itself so seriously. They try to get these two random guys to act in their movie by warning the characters not to go to the farm nearby.
We need you to tell us to stay away from there.
You don't really want the direction.
That's right, that's right. And action.
Good afternoon. Hey, do you guys know how to get out to the...
It's scary.
Oh, cut.
They try several takes, but it becomes clear that it's just not gonna work.
Bad things happen out there.
Yeah, bad things.
Alrighty. And cut.
Thank you guys. That is what we like to call awesome.
But then this happens.
What kind of movie did you say this was?
It's found footage.
Mm-hmm. And you're filming it here in Gonzales?
It's an old place off of Route 12.
You're not talking about old Rufus Mitchell's place up there on the lake, are you?
Yeah, I guess. I think so.
No. You don't want to go to that place. No.
This is the only time that the film's self-awareness is played off as a joke. It's not too in your face and it makes sense for the story. You've got your cliched small-town hicks warning them not to go to a place that they're really going to after trying and failing to get them to do the same thing for their movie within the movie. It's a joke that doesn't need to be explained by the characters in the film, and it's pretty funny. And it makes me think that the rest of this film would have been a lot better if it had bothered to make the rest of the self-awareness as sarcastic as this scene. So I think it got at least this one thing right.
It's happening. We're making movies.
So that was found footage 3D. It really pissed me off with how dumb it was, but it was kind of okay for that one scene. And this is a new channel and I'm still kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to be wrapping up these videos, so I'll just wrap it up. If you like the video, be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell so you'll get notified whenever I make a new one of these. Also, be sure to like the video and leave a comment below letting me know what movie you think I should do a video on next. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time.